This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Hello and welcome to our coverage of Free Practice 3 for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It's round 2 of the Formula One World Championship of 2022. I'm Jenny Gow, alongside me, Sam Bird, former F1 reserve and test driver for Mercedes, and I almost said Extreme E. That would be wrong. That would be very wrong, wouldn't it? Sorry. Sorry. So Formula E driver for Jaguar, and alongside him is Jack Nicholls, our F1 commentator, and Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief F1 writer, is also standing by. Quite a lot happened over the last 24 hours with the missile attack happening around 10 miles outside of the circuit yesterday. And then subsequent meetings, F1 meetings, FIA meetings, and then driver meetings. And the driver meetings, Jack Nicholls, went on and on and on last night. It was quite extraordinary.
Yeah, well, last time we spoke to you guys, there was going to be a meeting about 45 minutes later with the team principals and everyone. And they all had a meeting with the FIA and F1 and everyone. And they were like, yeah, fine, race is going to carry on. Then the drivers' briefing happened. And as it normally does on a Friday night, to discuss runoff areas or yellow flag zones or whatever. But then seemingly conversation turned to the missile strike, and it just went on, and suddenly the team principals were coming back in. Ross Brawn, Stefano Domenicali were popping in and out of the meetings. Team principals that had gone home then came back, like Mattia Binotto, and there was a big long old chat. It ended up being about 4 hours-ish that they were in there. In the end, the drivers have agreed to race. One can only presume from the length of the meeting that they were not like, yeah, we'll race, that's fine, that there was some kind of disagreement to race from some elements of the drivers. So my information was that at one point, every single driver unanimously said they did not want to go out there and drive. Really?
And that swung round over the course of those 4-hour and 20-minute deliberations. Andrew Benson can probably bring us a little bit more about what you were hearing and what you've heard subsequently.
Well, Jenny, the drivers were very spooked, there's no doubt about that, and so were some of the team figures as well. Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto has been speaking in a press conference this morning, and he said the drivers were concerned, all of us were concerned. Over the course of those 4 hours, which sort of started before the drivers' briefing, went into the drivers' briefing, carried on after the drivers' briefing, the drivers were all in this one room with sort of windows all around it, everybody could see into it, and various senior figures went in and out over the course of that time. They were given enough reassurances that the circuit was safe to agree to race, and those talks were complex. There was some various conversations about this, that, and the other. One thing I heard that was discussed was this is not something that was directed to them from the outside, but it was just like, if we don't race, will there be complications getting out of the country? Will the freight be able to get to the next race in time, etc., etc. The Saudi authorities became involved, and they were basically told that the Yemeni rebels that launched the attack have been targeting infrastructure and not civilians, and that the authorities assured them that the track was safe. Now, obviously, there's an obvious question that arises from that. If a missile can hit an oil depot 9 miles from a track, it can hit a racetrack. But, they say they've been assured, they say they trust those assurances, and here we are. And I should add that the drivers themselves haven't actually said anything yet, other than in a statement from the Grand Prix Drivers Association, which you can read on the BBC Sport website.
I was just about to read it out, actually.
Yeah, well, I dare say individually they'll be speaking after qualifying a bit later on.
So that GPDA statement said yesterday was a difficult day for Formula One and a stressful day for us Formula One drivers. Perhaps it is hard to comprehend if you have never driven an F1 car on this fast and challenging Jeddah track, but on seeing the smoke from the incident, it was difficult to remain a fully focused race driver and erase natural human concerns. Consequently, we went into long discussions between ourselves, with our team principals, and with the most senior people who run our sport. A large variety of opinions were shared and debated, and having listened not only to the Formula One powers, but also to the Saudi government ministers who explained how security measures were being elevated to the maximum, the outcome was a resolution that we would practice and qualify today and race tomorrow. We therefore, that's a car going out, I'll be there, promise, in a minute. We therefore hope that the 2022 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix will be remembered as a good race rather than for the incident that took place yesterday. Unlikely, I think.
Well, what I find interesting about that statement is, to me, it sounds kind of defensive. You know, it's that sort of, if you haven't driven an F1 car, you can't understand how difficult it is, and all these things are putting us off and stuff. It sort of felt defensive, where I think the majority of people would overall be on the driver's side of, yeah, absolutely, I can see why. Do you know what I mean? I found that a little bit incongruous, almost. Not quite the right word, but it's like, guys, you don't need to defend yourselves here. Like, everyone's backing you, I would say, largely, looking at the social medias and stuff. I think there's also a wider question of, is it, not wanting to race for safety reasons because you literally think there could be a missile strike on the track, or is it not wanting to race, which is what we're kind of alluding to? But there is a deeper, more existential question about not wanting to race because you're in a country that is effectively at war with another country, and that's kind of the depth that you don't really get it. Okay, you're safe to. There's a difference of, are we safe to race and should we be racing? And I think that's a little blurred, or we're only focusing on the safety element. Andrew?
Well, Jack, yes, of course. Now, not many of the drivers have said it explicitly, but Lewis Hamilton has. He's already said he's not comfortable being in Saudi Arabia, and it's pretty clear that a number of the drivers share that view, even if they're not prepared to say quite so explicitly out loud. And I know that this situation is going to lead to conversations about the viability of this race going forward. That point's already been raised within Formula One, I'm told, and that will carry on. But of course, it's an extremely complex situation. The Formula One's position on racing in Saudi Arabia, they always know it's controversial, is that they hope to make positive change, to instigate positive change in society. Hamilton's counterpoint to that is, well, if the Saudis want to make change, they can just go and do it. They don't need to, why do we need to persuade them? And then there's also money involved, of course. This is a long contract. It's an extremely lucrative contract. You can see the posters for the Saudi oil company all over the track, and the Saudi oil company sponsor Formula One. And not only that, but they're involved in developing sustainable fuels, which Formula One hopes to develop to be used from 2026 to burnish its environmental credentials. So it's, there's a lot of balls in the air on this one. But what it has underlined is the risks that any sport takes when they decide to get into bed with a country which has a record that is so globally well known on such difficult topics as Saudi Arabia has.
We will get to the action in just a second. I think it's just worth saying we haven't heard individually from the drivers yet. We will hope to hear from them after qualifying will be the first chance, and you can guarantee that a lot of the questions they'll face won't be about qualifying. It won't be about free practice 3. It'll be about the situation, to try and understand what happened yesterday. And I think it is important, Jack, for people at home to be able to understand the discussions that were had and what the drivers felt and why they felt it. And I always think there's an underlying issue of how much can you say when you're actually in the country? Like, let's wait until they get out the country and then hear what they have to say when there's a certain level of freedom of speech that there might not necessarily, I'm not saying there isn't, but there might not necessarily be when you're actually in that country. Yeah,
potentially. I think the other thing that I would say as not exactly a counterpoint and not a defence in any way, but a bit of context. And the first time I went to Saudi Arabia was 2018, and when you got there in December 2018, I think. And when I got there, I had to go through a briefing on what happens if there's a missile strike, and we were all told what we were meant to do. We had that same briefing when we went there in 2019. and then the same briefing in 2020.
Just
and
to
then
be
in
clear, that wasn't with Formula
No, this was
1.
for Formula E, my apologies. And then in 2020, whilst the podium celebrations were ongoing and Sam was on the podium, there was a missile strike intercepted over Riyadh that was, reportedly aimed for the circuit. And so I think it is, and there were strikes on Jeddah, last week. So I think it is a different climate a little bit in Saudi Arabia, in that it is a bit more, it's not acceptable, but it's a bit more the norm.
Yeah, it happens on a regular basis.
Exactly.
Of
and
course.
so, and that's not to diminish the nature of this or the importance of it, but I can see how it seems rather blasé, this approach. And I think that if there had been a terrorist attack or a missile strike 10 miles from Silverstone, obviously the race is not going on, but this is the nature of this country. So the incident itself is not a surprising one. And that is not to say that it is therefore fine and everything's correct and we can carry on nevertheless, but it's just to add a little bit of that context as to why maybe it seems a little bit blasé. Now, should Formula One and other global sports be going there is a different question to that, but that is the environment of the country where that is kind of the norm a little bit.
Okay, you can hear the session has got underway. Apologies, but we felt it was important to talk about what happened yesterday. It's now 6 minutes past, so I will hand over to Sam and Jack, and let's see what goes on track.
Yeah, on track. We've got a very interesting day ahead because we're in this third free practice session now where we are warm, 24 degrees the air temperature. Track temperature is 30 degrees, so a little bit unrepresentative compared to the free practice 2 yesterday. We didn't get... So yesterday, Charles Leclerc ended the session quickest on the soft tyre, but behind him, Verstappen, Perez and Sainz all set their quickest time on the medium, so they didn't get a proper lap time in on the softs. Then, both Ferraris hit the wall, so didn't get any long running in. So they have got quite a bit of work to do, I think, today, Sam.
Hello everybody. Yes, they do, Jack. I think that they've got to do quite a bit of work for the race, in FP3. The conditions seem to have changed a little bit overnight, Jack. There's a lot more wind out there now. As we've said before, these track conditions now, seeing as that it is a night race and night qualifying, are a little bit unrepresentative. So it was a disappointment for Ferrari at the end of yesterday not being able to get those laps in. So they're going to have to do their homework in an unrepresentative kind of time frame, but they've got the speed in the car. I make no mistake of it. It is Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz versus Max Verstappen, I believe, for the race win this weekend.
Yeah, interesting. 52 minutes to go. Andrew, what did we learn on track yesterday in free practice 2?
Well, it was a tricky one, Jack, because as you were saying, Verstappen didn't get a time in on the soft tyre, whereas Leclerc did. And they're obviously the two lead drivers for those teams until Carlos Sainz could get himself up to speed properly anyway. Verstappen did do most of a lap on the soft tyre, however, and it looked on that part lap as if it was close, as you would expect it to be, but as if he was a little bit slower than Leclerc, a tenth or two, up to the point where he had to abort. So that's interesting. And the other thing to learn from yesterday is that the Mercedes was porpoising badly, as anyone who followed the practice yesterday will have heard. Both the drivers were talking about it. That's this aerodynamic bouncing that they've been getting, which they say is the biggest limitation on their car. They were losing nearly all their lap time through the fast swerves in the first sector, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that sort of area, because those are, unlike many of the bends in the Saudi track, those are actual corners, and the driver has to commit to them. and the bouncing makes it difficult to commit through that section. So 4/10 they were losing through there.
So through the fast, so what you're saying is sort of through the fast sweepers, you can just kind of bounce your way through on full throttle. But with the ones where you need to do a little lift or a bit of brake or something.
Where Leclerc's coming up to now on the camera, if anyone's following the camera, this section here, this left, right, and then the fast swerves up to turn 13, that section there is where Mercedes are losing all their time, 4/10 it was. The rest of the lap, they were pretty much equal with Red Bull and Ferrari. So they're taking that as evidence that if they can just fix this porpoising, then they could actually get into the battle. But of course, that's a big if.
Well, for those of you wishing to sync, we have got 49 minutes and 55, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 on the clock. And thank you for joining us here on the BBC Sport website. Charles Leclerc has done a 1 minute 53.0 on his first lap out, but he's going quicker than that. Sainz is out as well, and it's only the two Ferraris, due to that loss of running yesterday, as previously alluded to, that are out on circuit. Well, Lando Norris has just left the pits. A few others have done some installs. Here comes Leclerc out of the final corner, and he comes across the line now, and the Monegasque man does a 1 minute 31.052. Jenny?
Yeah, just looking at the tyres from yesterday, you say, what did we learn? Well, we learnt what Pirelli tell us about the gap between the tyres. Soft to medium is a difference of 0.6, and then the medium to hard's 1.5. So there's quite a big difference between those tyre compounds. We know the hards are a little bit grotty. We saw it last time out in Bahrain when the hards were put onto Hamilton, who was the first to make a pit stop and then went to the hards. Not many other people did that because they just were horrible out there. They're very hard to control. It's like you're skating on ice. And around, Sam, I'm supposing around a track like this, the last thing you want is a car that feels like it's on ice, because the walls are pretty close.
Oh yeah, I can imagine the first couple of laps on the hard compound tyre around here would be eye-opening, Jenny, to say the least. I'm surprised that you said 0.6 from the soft to the medium. Yesterday we saw in FP1 Max Verstappen topping the times for most of the session on a medium compound tyre, and that time was really competitive compared to the Ferrari.
It is worth pointing out the usual caveat that we have to, which is these are Pirelli supplied timings.
Exactly. So I think that the medium is closer to the soft than what Pirelli is saying.
Andrew?
From what we saw.
Well, the other thing to say is that, yes, the soft and the medium are the quicker tyres over one lap, but the soft is not a good race tyre, and the hard actually looks like the best race tyre. So the crossover point, the point at which the hard gets faster than the medium, is only 12 laps into the stint. So you can expect the race to be held mainly on the mediums and hards, I think. At least that's the indication from yesterday.
Therefore, I'm a little surprised Ferrari are out on the softs right now.
Well, they're probably using them up, Jack, in the same way that Mercedes did yesterday. If you look at the list of tyres that are left over for the weekend, Mercedes have done the same strategy as they did in Bahrain last weekend. They've left themselves what some could term as a bit short of soft tyres for qualifying. So they don't have enough softs to do 2 runs in each of the 3 sessions, but that's a deliberate plan because they want to keep the mediums and the hards back for the race.
So, Andrew, yesterday we saw Nicholas Latifi at the end of FP2 really struggling, complaining about the medium compounds going off after I think about 12 laps or 13 laps of running. So does that push this race potentially to another 3-stopper, do you think, for some people with that kind of lifespan on the tyre?
They'll definitely try not to do a 3-stop. They will be desperate not to do that.
We thought that would be the case in Bahrain, that it would be a 2-stop, but we were wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, they try to minimise the stops as much as possible, and then, as you know, Sam, they'll plan out with computers what's the optimum stint length, what's the optimum lap time that they can run to do the fastest race, basically. And don't believe anyone who tells you that they don't have to manage these Pirelli tyres anymore after the design change from last year, because they do. But I don't know how many stops it'll be, but I would imagine they'll be trying to minimise them. And as I said, the race you would expect at this stage would be on the medium and the hard. And bear in mind, for anybody who's getting a bit confused and as to why they did see the softs in the race in Bahrain. Okay, the track in Bahrain is a different gauge, and it's rougher on the tyres. But the tyres are all 1 grade softer here in Saudi Arabia than they were in Bahrain last weekend. So it's the C2, 3 and 4 compounds rather than the C1, 2 and 3.
Yeah, the softs change not every race, but they can be different each race that we go to. 45 minutes to go. Leclerc across the line now to do a 1 minute 30.139, which is 8 tenths quicker than his teammate Carlos Sainz has managed. Valtteri Bottas has just cut the timing beam to go 1.4 seconds slower than that on a 1 minute 31.580. Norris's lap time is 2.4 seconds away from Leclerc, and he is the 4th driver to have set the lap time. Sainz comes through now. He improves on a second run, and he goes half a second away from Charles Leclerc on the soft tyres. 45 minutes to go.
This track is a real confidence track, I think, Jack. You can't be scared to attack the middle sector especially. You've got to be so committed. Charles Leclerc is just put down a massive marker there with a 30.1, looking supremely confident within the car. But also it was on the second lap. So it's like that first push lap, he's got a gauge of what the car is doing, had a cool down lap, gone again, and because it's such a flowing circuit, he's able to push that much harder on lap 2 and find 8 tenths of a second, even though the tyres have already kind of seen their best.
Valtteri Bottas, 3rd quickest. Norris 4th. Zhou has gone out on circuit now, as has Latifi, Albon, Tsunoda, Gasly and Ricciardo. Jenny.
Worth saying about Kevin Magnussen, had problems yesterday. He had hydraulics problems. They changed the radiator. He had more problems going on later in the day. I've spoken to the team this morning, and amongst other things, we chatted about Kevin's car, and they said, yeah, it should be fine. I hope it is, because he was so good last time out. I would hate for Haas to lose that momentum and that kind of feeling of being lifted coming into a race weekend with all the challenges going on around the race this weekend anyway. It would be good for them just to have a clean day, some nice, easy running. Yeah,
absolutely. But look, Haas is one of, if not the smallest team within Formula One. We can't expect them to finish 5th every race. That was an incredible result, like a fairy tale result for them and for Kevin Magnussen. Let's put it out there that's not necessarily their form, I don't think. I hope that they can continue to score points on a more regular basis. Talking about problems as well, Jenny, we saw Yuki Tsunoda pull up at the end of free practice 2 yesterday with what sounded like a really, really horrendous gearbox or engine issue. Have we got any information on that? Has anything been changed, or what's been done overnight with AlphaTauri?
Caller, hold the line.
Yeah, okay.
Let me get back to you in 2 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a dialing tone now?
It will be more than 2 seconds. But
okay.
That was the, the relative 2 seconds.
Okay. Other people with, running issues yesterday and problems. Jack, you had a bit of an issue this morning, didn't you?
Oh,
doing your, while you were pushing, you had an issue.
I went for a run and fell over. That's all there is to it.
And how many times did you fall over,
Well,
Jack
somehow
Nicholls?
I fell over. I'm running and just didn't pick my foot up enough. Went down, did the whole James Bond roll, and then just kept running straight away.
Okay.
And that was fine. And then about half a kilometre later, went down again. I don't know what happened. And that time I cut my hand. So I don't know, both hands. I don't know what happened there.
Hang on, cut or scuff? Let's see.
Scuff. I'm not claiming I carried on and it was fine. But I've never fallen over running before. But twice in half a kilometre. Carlos Sainz is coming. We're moving on now. Carlos Sainz coming through turn 22. Now up towards the final couple of corners. He's on a faster first sector than Leclerc has managed. Leclerc on a 30.139. Sainz onto the brakes now. Into the final turn. Just about got it around. And then out towards the line. And I don't think he's going to beat Leclerc, but he closes to within a couple of tenths of a second. So 1 minute 30.323 for Carlos Sainz. 1.3 seconds quicker than the McLaren of Norris. Tsunoda comes across the line, as does Gasly. They've just done a sort of slow first lap. Hamilton out on circuit as well. Everybody is out on the soft tyres at the moment.
So the soft tyre is able to withstand multiple laps of pushing, as long as you do a cool down in between. That was Sainz's third push lap. So he's on out, push, cool, push, cool, push. And he continues to improve his lap time. So if that's the case in Q1, Q2, we're probably, of course, the Ferraris will get away with only using one set of tyres, as we see Hamilton have a big oversteer in the middle sector. Is the fastest way around this circuit keeping the same tyre on and continuing to push on the same tyre?
Potentially. The track evolution is fairly big as well. We're already, even though we're in free practice 3 and brighter conditions and stuff, we're only a tenth away from what Charles Leclerc managed yesterday on the soft tyres in that Ferrari. So we'll have to see what runs they do, because they do seem to be holding up quite well. Whether you're losing the absolute peak, we'll have to wait and see.
But that's what I mean about the nature of this circuit. Very flowing, very committed, confident circuit. You know, multiple laps. Sometimes the actual tyre grip is outweighed by getting into a flow, getting into a rhythm.
Andrew?
I hear what Sam's saying, but there's often a pattern that they do this in practice sessions, but then when it comes to when it really matters in qualifying, you know, with everything turned up and them fully tuned in and focused, they tend to nail it on the first lap, and that's usually the lap. It's not that common for them to do. It's not something that you never ever see, but it's not usual, put it that way, for them to do their best time on the second lap in qualifying.
Nala Pack says, blame it on your running shoes porpoising. Jack, that's what was happening. I was porpoising, going so fast. Leclerc and Sainz back in the pits now. Norris is getting a decent chunk of traffic there. I'm not sure if he was on a push lap, Norris. I don't believe so, but he has come up behind Schumacher, behind Russell, as he comes down in towards turn 13. Very busy circuit out there. He wants to get ahead of these drivers, and he is doing so now, Lando Norris. His last lap was at 33.7, so he might have been on a sort of longish run at the moment, but Norris trying to find some clear air. So Verstappen is the only driver still in the pit lane. So everybody else has left the pits. Ocon, Alonso, Hülkenberg and Schumacher only sort of just now, but Verstappen yet to leave the pit lane at all. Jenny?
Just to give you a quick update, they changed the ice on Yuki Tsunoda's car. It was a driveline issue at the end of the session. I said I'd find out, so there we go. Done.
Great news.
Thanks. Not for them.
No. Bad news.
Internal combustion engine isn't the part you really want to replace, but I'm sure they'll send it back to wherever Milton Keynes now, I suppose they send it back to, and they'll have a look at it and try and work out if they can put it back in the pool, and I'm sure they will. No penalty, by the way.
Is it do we call it Andrew Benson, do we call it a Red Bull engine now? Is that what we call it?
Well, it says Red Bull powertrains on the car, but everybody knows it's a Honda, designed by Honda, built by Honda and shipped over to Red Bull. There's not really any pretense about that.
But that will be... So what happens now when they build a new engine? Does it still get built by Honda, or do Red Bull copy the plans and build it in Milton Keynes?
So the upgrade for 2022 to take account of the new E10 fuels, which is 10% ethanol for environmental reasons for this season, plus any performance upgrades. That was all done by Honda. They're being built in Japan, and they're sent over to the Red Bull factory to be put in the cars, basically just like before. There's not any ongoing development now, or at least actually that's something I need to clarify, because you can make changes as long as you do it for reliability reasons, in inverted commas, which usually ends up being performance. So I need to clarify on who's doing those changes.
Or if they need to build a new one because one blew up or something,
Well, that would definitely be done in Sakura.
Okay.
So, but just the one point to mention here, to pick up on Jenny's point, is that that's Tsunoda and Alonso Alpine have both had to get new engines fitted, and it's only the second race, and they're only allowed 3 for the year. Now, That's not to say those engines are necessarily kaput and it's going to cause them problems next year. I would imagine certainly Alpine hope that they can get that engine that Alonso had the problem with yesterday back in the pool, or back in Bahrain, I should say, after Bahrain, back in their engine pool. But it does leave question marks about both those teams and those engines about the season going forward.
And what about Gazzo?
Well, quite. Alpine yesterday said there was no knock-on effect for Ocon's engine after Alonso's problem. I don't know what AlphaTauri Jen are saying.
But Gasly in last race in Bahrain.
barbecue.
Oh yeah, he had an MGUK failure, so that's one of his MGUKs gone. So that's another person with a reliability problem. Yeah, well spotted. Yeah.
So that's 2 races and 2 Honda problems.
Yes.
Worth saying.
And a Red Bull fuel system problem as well.
Not ideal.
Worth saying they are sent back to Milton Keynes now if they have any issues. That they don't go back to Sakura. Apparently, they go to Milton Keynes to get fiddled with.
Okay, so to get sort of a repair or whatever, or a tweak. Interesting. 34 minutes and 35 seconds left on the clock. So Verstappen out on circuit. Perez has just come across the line to do a 1:30.291 on the softs, which draws him level pretty much with Charles Leclerc. Well, in between the 2 Ferraris, Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, the top 3, and then Bottas. Hamilton and Russell are 8th and 9th, but we saw this yesterday where they would be sort of hanging around in the midfield, and then when it came down to the proper runs, they would jump up to their, what I feel will be a traditional 5th and 6th spot over the course of the season. Verstappen is coming up to the final corner. Now, we didn't get a true gauge from Verstappen yesterday because on his first lap, he, I think, made a mistake at turn 1, so bailed out of that one, did another cool down, and when he then went to go again, Kevin Magnussen's car had stopped on circuit, so he had to bail out of that one too. And so we never got a full read on Verstappen's time. This time, though, he's coming into the left-hander of turn 1, now the right-hander of turn 2, and he is pushing, and this will give us our first sort of direct comparison with Charles Leclerc.
He did something very interesting, Jack. He went out and then he did a prep lap on the softs. So he didn't go out and immediately push. He's done an extra lap on the tyre. I don't know whether that's because he felt like the fronts wouldn't be in or something like that, but it was very interesting to see something different from Max Verstappen and the Red Bull approaching this fast lap.
He's 2/10 down from Charles Leclerc in Sector 1. He's now swinging it through the left-hander. Again, worth pointing out, as we said earlier on, that the Ferrari's quickest laps came on their second runs. Verstappen down through the gears into turn 16. Now back on the power for the flat-out drive to 200 miles an hour for the left-hander of turn 22 that's coming up any second now. The middle sector, he is a 10th down on Leclerc, but he has done the fastest middle sector. A lot of curve on the exit of 22.
He's looking very committed in the middle sector, isn't he? Looking very comfortable in that Red Bull machine as he's approaching the final corner of the lap. This is where he obviously locked up last year, ran wide and hit the wall on the exit. No such issues here in free practice 3 as he approaches the line, Jack. What's it going to be?
I think it's going to be tight. Well, it's 4th, actually.
Oh.
So 3/10 away from Leclerc, slower than his teammate Sergio Perez. So Leclerc quickest, a 1:30.139, a 10th to Perez, 2/10 to Sainz, 3/10 to Max Verstappen. The sound you can hear now is Pierre Gasly, who's done the fastest first sector of anyone and is actually looking rapid as he comes up towards turn 27. Onto the brakes. Turns it in, neat and tidy through there from Gasly, up to the wall, out towards the line. I don't think he's quite going to nip in front of Leclerc here, but can he get ahead of Perez? Yes, he can. 9 thousandths adrift of Charles Leclerc. The other AlphaTauri of Tsunoda goes up into 5th place ahead of Max Verstappen. The top 6 cars covered by 0.3 of a second. Leclerc, Gasly, Perez, Sainz, Tsunoda, Verstappen.
That car seems to really enjoy running in slightly hotter track temperature conditions. When it gets colder, the AlphaTauri tends to lose a little bit of grip. That's what we saw in Bahrain. And speaking to people in the know at that team, it seems to be the case that they are more comfortable in a hotter environment.
Bottas 7th, Zhou 8th, Hamilton 9th, Schumacher 10th, and then Alonso, Russell, Magnussen, Norris, Ocon, the top 15. Ricciardo, Albon, Stroll, Latifi and Hülkenberg, the top 20. So that'll be a bit of a concern for Verstappen that lap. We'll see whether he's going again.
No, I don't think that he'd be concerned by that at all.
Okay.
I really don't. I mean, he will know where he's lost time. And I think that there's probably time within himself. I don't think that he's 3/10 off, Jack. I really don't. I cannot see that for 1 minute. I imagine he will go again, and I will imagine he will go quicker.
Half an hour to go. Stroll gets ahead of Hülkenberg by 1/10 of a second. Aston Martin's really struggling down there in 18th and 19th positions. Latifi's returned to the pits. Alonso has just started another lap in the Alpine, where he's currently 11th. Good job from Mick Schumacher, up in 10th place at the moment, 9/10 of a second away. Jenny Gow.
I've just been listening across to some of the radio conversations, and Charles Leclerc, who has gone fastest at the moment, has just said to his team, just remind me when I get back to talk to you about my glove and my hand. I've got a problem with my thumb, and the glove is too tight on it. And the level of precision with these drivers just never fails to fascinate me. We're to probably just go, oh, well, my glove's too tight, nothing I can do. But they will be that they have technicians, don't they, that can help them.
Michael Schumacher always used to go on about the stitching in his gloves, in his thumbs. Yeah, it used to be very particular about his gloves and the stitching within. So gloves that we wear, they're Nomex fireproof, FIA approved gloves. They've got a specific serial number within them that has to conform with what the FIA require as part of our uniform to wear, and they're obviously stitched into the glove. Yet he was very, very particular about how the stitching was done, and he'd be uncomfortable with certain gloves. So I can totally see other drivers being the same.
Fernando Alonso comes across the line and ends up going 4/10 slower and in 7th place, but he was up after the middle sector on Charles Leclerc's time. Verstappen is almost 2/10 up on Leclerc this time again. Went into turn 22 pretty hot.
Went in a bit hot and a little bit deep, which then compromised his exit a little bit, Jack. He was a little bit late to the throttle, and that will affect him all the way out of 23 into 27.
He comes out of that corner now, gets on the power and out towards the line. This should send Verstappen to the top. By how far is going to be the question, and the answer is by quite a way, almost 4/10 of a second. Max Verstappen, a 1 minute 29.768, fastest lap time of the weekend, almost 4/10 up on Charles Leclerc in second, Gasly third, Perez fourth, Sainz fifth, Tsunoda 6th, Alonso, Bottas, Zhou and Hamilton the top 10, Schumacher, Magnussen, Russell, Norris, Ocon the top 15, Ricciardo, Albon, Stroll, Hülkenberg and Latifi the 20 drivers. So that's a bit more like it, I think, from Verstappen.
That is a lot more like it, so he's going to be a lot more comfortable now. So Andrew, your theory about the times coming on the first lap. So if you're wrong, I'm going to get in front of Zoom and have a very smug face in qualifying 1, just to let you know.
Yeah, I just want to emphasise I wasn't saying you were wrong.
No, you laid your bets.
It was
you have
not
to lay
the
in it now.
usual scenario.
No,
let's wait and see what happens in quali.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I've got my smug face ready and primed, ready to go. Okay, good.
I can see it in my mind's eye already, Sam.
Okay, good.
All right.
Good.
That is Sam Bird, the former Mercedes F1 reserve driver and current Jaguar Formula E driver, alongside us for commentary this weekend, as he was in Bahrain, as he will be again later in the season. Rob says, I wonder if drivers are as fussy with underwear as they are with gloves. DC used to have lucky pants, apparently. Jenny,
drivers just fussy, full stop. Surely we know that much now. But so hang on, DC used to have lucky underpants, because we know Christian Horner has lucky underpants from when I spoke to him in Saudi Arabia last season. Because he said he had lucky underpants, and I was. I asked him about it on the grid, which apparently is not the time to do it.
I don't know if.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if. I'm not.
Are you filtering yourself as you're speaking? That's a shame.
I was going to say I don't believe David Coulthard has unlucky underpants.
Oh, I thought you were just going to say you don't believe he wears underpants.
Well, no, actually, that's very true as well. But this is we can't be slandering. We can't be slandering Coulthard. Sam,
But do I have lucky pants?
Do you have like a specific brand that you wear, or like, you don't have to say that, but do you have like, or just whatever's in the drawer, you chuck it on?
Okay, now we're going down the.
Or do they have to be Nomex? Because actually, Lucas de Grassi got a fine for wearing the wrong pants.
No, so what Lucas did was, because it was a very hot day, he cut the Nomex, which is actually not allowed.
Where?
Hang on, yeah.
So.
What,
like
you
a
cut
little
them
hole
off?
in the front.
Yeah, if you've got holes in your Nomex, or if you've made any alterations to your fireproof clothing, it is deemed void. You can't use
Right.
it. So Lucas de Grassi in Formula E, he cut them into like shorts, so that if he got checked by the FIA, he could pull them down a little bit and say, look, I'm wearing Nomex, all fine. But they asked for him to pull them fully down, and lo and behold, there was nothing there.
With the drive shaft. Let me see something. I'm checking. Should I stop or should I go?
That's Pierre Gasly.
Stop the car. Yeah. Should I stop here or later? Okay, we will recover it. Stop where you are.
So Gasly has stopped at the exit of the pit lane, just as we were talking about Honda/Red Bull drivetrain, powertrain issues. Gasly stops with what he says is a drive shaft problem.
But that's not drivetrain. That's not the problem with the ice. It's that if it's a drive shaft issue, that's less concerning for the team.
So the AlphaTauri team are going to have to go down to the end of the pit lane and scoop Gasly's car back up and bring him back.
Well, we don't know whether he can, because
He's a bit beyond.
He's beyond the point at which the mechanics can actually retrieve the car.
He's going to have to push his own car backwards. Oh, here, have a listen.
It sounds almost like a kind of slipping clutch kind of thing. I'm sure it is, but like it's that kind of sound.
Well, when you lose a drive shaft, when one lets go or one pops out of place, basically you're not getting drive through that wheel, and you sound like you're getting a lot of revs and obviously no propulsion from the rear end.
Gasly, as predicted, is having to push his own car back. He's doing a solid effort, actually. The marshals have come to help him now.
Nice and flat there, but he's in a very awkward place if anyone comes in. I hope they're waving some flags around there, because he's blocking, the car takes up pretty much the whole of pit lane exit, so when they're pushing it back, it's taking up the whole of pit lane exit, funnily enough.
Yeah, but he'll be out of the way in a moment or two. Double waved yellows there as well as they push that car back, so that will probably be the end of Pierre Gasly's session. 23 minutes on the clock.
Will that be the end of Pierre Gasly's... It was a part of his engine again? That's the reliability on these cars. I mean, they're new cars, they're in their infancy, it's fair to say, but just having a look at all the parts that were changed on Yuki Tsunoda's car, and I think it was more than just the ice, because if I go through, it says the ice, the turbocharger, it says the MGUH for Yuki Tsunoda as well. Going through, it continues. The MGUK was changed, and the exhaust was changed on Yuki Tsunoda. He doesn't get a penalty for any of them, but that's a pretty big part. It's also worth saying there's a new control electronics on Kevin Magnussen's number 20 car.
So we are expecting, of course, given the pace of the Red Bull, that Max Verstappen this year will be fighting for the World Championship again. That's pretty much a given. Seeing all these issues, Jenny, with, let's call it the Red Bull or the Honda powertrain, as it were, he's the one driver so far to not... Well, actually, no, that's an absolute load of rubbish, because he retired from Bahrain. If these issues continue to occur, this could derail his World Championship hopes, because we are seeing a lot of issues with this, and Ferrari so far seems to be a lot more bulletproof.
Yeah, it's the drivers that were the issue yesterday for Ferrari. I mean, they're very good drivers, but unfortunately both of them having a little touch with the barriers.
But in terms of reliability, you know, Max Verstappen's championship this year could be determined by reliability. Let's hope it's not, but right now it looks like their rear end is more fragile.
Here's a good question from Tony on hashtag BBC F1. Do drivers take the level of detail and fussiness away from the track and require it in the rest of their lives, or do they switch it on and off?
depends on the driver. So I'm not particularly fussy. However, there are some very, very fussy drivers out there.
Really?
Like really,
You're not,
really
hang on a
fussy.
minute. You're not particularly fussy yet. How did you ask me to make your coffee for you just before the session started?
No, I simply said I want a spoon of coffee and then another half a spoon of coffee. And then...
Asking for a strong coffee is not fussy.
Yeah, you got into a flap and... And I had to explain it again. That's not fussy.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
I would say that there are far more meticulous drivers out there with all aspects of their life. Like they like things to be perfect, almost OCD. You know, I know that my good friend Max Chilton is obsessive compulsive about everything being neat and tidy. And everything has to be in a place, and to the point where his shed in his garden, everything has a particular place. His shed looks like an operating theatre.
Really?
Max's shed. So
I know you and Michael Schumacher go back way further than I do, but I know that he also used to be very specific about how he kept his cupboards, so that all of the tins of food had to be facing the right way in the right order.
So I will do that once a year. And be like, right, I'm organising this. I put everything in its place.
Well, you alphabetize your tins.
I have not my tins. I tend to do tins on size because alphabetically it all looks a bit messy. I prefer its size. Herbs, obviously alphabetical.
Oh yeah, I have a herb drawer which is
yeah
alphabetized.
But what I will do is I will organise it all, but then I will take a herb and just chuck it back in.
Oh no!
And take a thing. So I ruin all my hard work.
That makes me feel sick.
Once a year, I will organise everything. Then it will just become a mess over the year. Like I was saying, first race of a season, I do notes. Second race, I go, nah.
it's carnage.
I'm not doing notes anymore.
I'm going to take a picture of my herb and spice drawer and put it on socials tonight.
I won't be looking at it.
I'm so proud of it. I'm going to send it to you directly.
I'm not going to look at it. Andrew Benson.
I think Formula One is a meticulous sport. It always has been. Think about, Bernie Ecclestone and his white shirts, always pressed. He has all the trucks lined up in order, not a wheel out of line. I remember Jackie Stewart when he ran Formula 3 and Formula 3000 teams. He used to have the trucks jacked up so that the tyre maker's name was across the top of each wheel on the trucks, and they were polished. You look in a garage, you look in a factory. Ron Dennis was notorious for it. It's a thing in motorsport. And actually, I'm going to ask Sam about this. I've got a bit of a theory, and it applies to the drivers as well. And I wonder whether the skills that are required of a Formula One driver are... You kind of almost need to be on that sort of OCD side of things, because if you think about what they've got to do, they've got to hit their marks every single lap at exactly the same point, same braking point, same turning point, same apex, same exit, etc., etc., etc. Not many people could do that, but racing drivers have to. That's their job, and maybe there's a line to be drawn there between, how people like their fridges organised, for example. I know drivers who have to have their fridges ordered in a certain way,
really?
Or won't allow their partners to cook in the apartment because they don't like the smell, and things like that. And being a racing driver, I don't know.
I mean, presumably you're not giving us a name on that one, Benson. You're chucking that out there and leaving it.
I'm not going to give the audience the name. I'll tell you later over a coffee or something, Jack.
Okay, great.
I think that we are, as human beings and as athletes, we are driven and obsessed with the pursuit of perfection on the circuit. Absolutely. We're driven by lap time and the focus that we all have towards this obsession with perfection on the circuit. That's what drives all of us in order to try and improve our lap time. I suppose I take it into my social life a little bit, but then other people take it much further. As we go on board with Lewis Hamilton, only 1/10 down in Sector 1, Jack.
And Valtteri Bottas has gone second quickest. He's just come across the line on that last lap to do a 1 minute 30.030, 2/10 slower than Max Verstappen. Hamilton, as you say, quick in Sector 1, which was where Andrew Benson alluded to Mercedes losing all of their time yesterday. He's now coming through the middle sector, up towards the left-hander at turn 22. He's now almost half a second down, really bouncy. into turn 22 and then back on the power again. He's down in 11th place, so this will be an improvement for Hamilton. They're doing their runs later. We'll see whether Verstappen and Leclerc go back out again, but 16 minutes to go. Hamilton on the power out of the final corner, out towards the line. And where's this going to put him? 9th. A second away from Verstappen. 3 tenths behind Fernando Alonso. So that third sector was particularly slow there. Jenny.
Just looking at his teammate, actually, George Russell, there was an incident on him leaving the pit lane and pit exit, and he crossed over the solid white line on pit exit, which you're not allowed to do. It was in the race director's notes, actually, today. So it's one to watch out for. He could be in a little bit of trouble for doing that.
Yeah, well, no further investigation, the stewards have said.
No, he won't be in any trouble at all, so just... Rewind what I said and erase it. Tipex that out.
It was a very small crossing of the line. It was just sort of like half a wheel. Here's Joe.
Man, lot of traffic. What's Merc doing?
Copy, George. Just calm. We reset and try again.
It was a pretty dangerous one.
It was actually the same corner that Schumacher came across Hamilton last year. That Zhou Guanyu has just come across Hamilton. A little bit of an off for Nicholas Latifi. He's gone straight on down at turn 4 and then carried on his way. Nulla Pack says, I always put my tins upside down as I think they've been right way up for so long that the insides will have settled to the bottom. That's interesting. I like that. I like that thinking. I don't know if it's a thing at all, but there we go.
It's not going to make any difference for a can of tuna. That's not got any. It's not going to move around much. Like a
yeah, but
can
maybe
of
like
baked
a can of
beans,
exactly, or
spaghetti hoops.
Exactly.
I've
all
never
of these
done that
things.
in my life. Now I feel like remiss.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
No.
Fine.
14 minutes to go. Verstappen quickest, Bottas second, Leclerc third, Gasly fourth, Perez fifth. Sainz, Tsunoda, Alonso, Hamilton, Zhou the top 10. Russell improved to go about a tenth and a half slower than Hamilton. He's in 11th place. Ocon is 12th, Stroll is 13th. Schumacher and Magnussen have been shuffled down to 14th and 15th in the Hasses. Not much running for Magnussen today, only 10 laps, which considering his issues yesterday is a little bit of a surprise. Ricciardo, Albon, Hülkenberg, Norris and Latifi the top 20. And with still, as Tsunoda comes into the final corner, is he improving? No, he's not. He's going to remain in 7th place, I think, here. But still no sign of the Ferraris doing any medium tyre running yet, which is basically the thing they missed out on yesterday. And with 13 minutes to go, they aren't doing it yet. Worth also saying, Leclerc didn't do much long running in Bahrain, did he? So then that was sort of a literal choice.
No, I think he did one or if not two kind of race mode laps, and he was comfortable, he was happy. He came back to the team and said, look, I'm happy with that, that's enough. And he went and comfortably won the Grand Prix in Bahrain. Every single driver, Jack, at the moment is out, if they're out on circuit, is still out on the soft tyres.
Yes, that's very true. Hamilton now has just done a personal best in Sector 1, not a personal best in Sector 2 though, and he is half a second away from Max Verstappen, so he's not improving anymore, Hamilton, on this second lap. 12 minutes and 15 seconds on the clock. He's coming up towards turn 27 now as he gets up to, I think he just about hit 200 miles an hour before getting on the brakes, gets the nose in and gets on the throttle once more. Might be improving here. Comes across the line, does improve, but not really by anything, by a couple of hundredths, and that's about it. Remains in 9th position, still 3 tenths away from Zhou, who's in 10th spot at the moment.
It's impressive to watch the drivers on board in Formula One, especially under braking. When we brake in a car with this much force and a lot of G, with a lot of G going through the body, you kind of sink in the seat, and you could see then Hamilton, he's a certain height on acceleration down the straight, and then when you brake, you're sort of squashed into the seat, and your head drops down, and you look like you're disappearing in the seat by, it looks like a couple of centimeters. That you go down, which I think is one of the reasons why perhaps yesterday he asked for the higher seat. Maybe when under braking in certain areas he was uncomfortable with his viewpoint when going into that scenario.
Just having a look at tyres very briefly. Hamilton went out for his very first run. He did 1 lap on a hard tyre, and it seems like he's the only person in the top 12 who went out on that hard tyre and did a 1 lap. But a few of the others have done a 1 lap. Is that them just scrubbing in the tyre so that they've taken off the sheen for it when they get into a race environment or a race situation?
Jenny, perhaps we did see in Bahrain, especially with the hard tyre, that when it came out the pits and it was a brand new hard compound tyre, that for 2 laps it didn't work. It didn't work.
In fact, Hamilton in particular
went off at turn 1 because he couldn't turn. So taking that shine off the surface can help that warm-up procedure.
So Hamilton did it on the hards, as did Magnussen, and then Schumacher and Stroll did it on the mediums, as did Hülkenberg. They all came out. Their first lap was a 1 lap install, scrubbed the tyres, and off they go.
We actually do something similar in Formula E. I know it's not Formula 1, but nobody goes and qualifies on, let's say, a new set of tyres. We all do multiple laps to take that shine and surface off the tyre, especially the front tyre, so that then it works in qualifying.
Andy Holbury, who's written a few motorsport books in his time, and he says that Indy 500 winner Dan Weldon used to pack his race bag the same way every single time, and to wind him up his teammates would regularly mess it up or hide his boots. So that's a bit of a harsh one. But 9 minutes and 15 seconds to go. Verstappen pushing again. He's done a quick sector 1, not the best of anyone, but he's going a little quicker now in the middle sector, because I think it was on the last lap his middle sector wasn't a personal best. It does appear to be this time through. So how much quicker is he than his previous time at the middle sector split? 3 tenths. 3 tenths up. Whoa, he's super wide there and bounces over the curbs on the exit at 22. He's been flirting with that the last couple of laps, but that was full commitment, and now he's backed off.
I think he might have found the limit. Might have found the limit at turn 22. Oof, that could have been a lot worse than what it was. When you go over a curb like that, Jack, you are not in control of the racing car, and you can be a passenger. As we see a replay now, hopping over that curb. If he'd got any more air time there, that could have been in the wall and maybe even day done. So he's very lucky, actually, to get away with that.
Yeah, big moment there for Verstappen. Nicholas Latifi has also had a bit of a moment at turn 2.
I hit the wall.
He's very similar, actually, to what Charles Leclerc did.
Yeah.
Like completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like a very unnecessary wall touch.
Yeah, because it wasn't even like the back end slid or anything like that, just drifted out a little bit too wide. Perez is pushing now in the first sector, and he's done a 32.9 in sector 1, which is he's had a little bit of a slide coming out of 13. Sergio Perez goes past Charles Leclerc, who's out on looking like a new set of soft tyres potentially for Charles Leclerc. We'll keep an eye out on it. Perez is 300ths up on Verstappen. Not a personal best in the middle sector for the Mexican. Now coming up to the final corner, he is improving and finding some time. 7 minutes and 23 seconds on the clock. Perez into the final corner, gets on the power and comes towards the line. And where's this going to put the Red Bull driver? Second quickest. Pretty much matches Verstappen, 600ths away from his teammate, but Verstappen was 3 tenths up on his previous best time, so there's definitely more time to come there. Fascinated to see what Charles Leclerc can do as he comes down in towards turn 1 now, through the left and then the right, down towards turn 4. Neat and tidy through there so far, it seems. He's 4th quickest currently, 3 tenths away. I'm just getting a replay of Verstappen's moment at turn 22. And I was expecting to have a little bit of radio there, but we're not going to get any, as he just pinged over the curb. All 4 wheels came off the ground at that point. Leclerc sets the fastest first sector of anyone. So the Ferrari flying now. He's just coming out of turn 13. Now making his way towards these sweeping corners. Haas keeping out of the way nicely on the right-hand side. Leclerc now about to come through the middle sector. Flat out up towards turn 22, where Verstappen had his moment. Remember, Verstappen was 0.3 up at this point. Leclerc is only 0.07 up, but it's not a personal best for Leclerc in the middle sector, so there's still lap time to come out there. In fact, it's over 0.3 down on Verstappen in the middle sector alone, Charles Leclerc, despite the fact that he's still improving. Whoa, deep into the final corner. Through 27. Out across the line, and Leclerc goes into third quickest, so he is 0.111 slower than Verstappen, but those kind of laps you definitely see where some of the time went.
Yeah, you can. That wasn't the perfect lap. The sector 1 was really committed, and then it just got a little bit scrappy towards the end. One thing I've noticed about the Ferrari, Jack, is most, if not all, cars will be running what is a small little bit of clear plastic in front of the cockpit. It's like a wind protector. Lewis Hamilton's got a very jagged one on the front of his Mercedes, just behind where the halo sits. Ferrari are not running that, which creates an awful lot of wind deflection over the helmet, but it can actually improve a little bit of top speed, because when the wind hits that, it's effectively drag.
Interesting. 4 minutes and 35 seconds to go. Mag's back. 6th place for Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, less than half a second away from Max Verstappen as he finished that previous lap. Esteban Ocon has just gone into 9th place, so the order with 4 minutes and 20 seconds to go is Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Bottas in 4th, Gasly 5th, then it's Magnussen, Alonso, Sainz, Ocon and Tsunoda the top 10, Hamilton, Zhou, Russell, Stroll and Schumacher the top 15, Ricciardo, Albon, Hulkenberg, Norris and Latifi the 20 drivers. Hamilton did just do a lap and a 1 minute 30.7, so we had this in Bahrain. It was sort of ebbed and flowed with Mercedes, where they looked best of the rest and then nowhere, then best of the rest, then nowhere. But these have been very much nowhere laps for Mercedes at the moment.
It's a struggle right now. And with back-to-back races, they haven't had time to get those cars back to Brackley to fully understand and develop new parts to take it forwards. This was always going to be a painful race, I believe.
Just listening across actually to Lewis Hamilton, and he's asking Pete Bonington, his race engineer, like, what's going on at 16, can I improve there? And he's actually saying it's the lift through 17 that's hurting us, so if you compromise on 16, maybe it'll help with turn 17. And it's that level of help that, okay, Lewis often asks, where can I be better? But he seems unsure of himself in that car right now.
Yeah, but that's very useful information given by Peter. I mean, it makes perfect sense as well, Jenny, because the straight out of 17 carries all the way to 22. You're flat out through 18, 19, 20, 21. There's more time to lose in that big chunk rather than just a 16. So you give up and sacrifice a little bit of minimum 16, place the car well and get on the power early through and out of 17, it can reap the rewards. So, if there's a 10th there, I don't know where a 10th would put Lewis. In fact, he doesn't really. He needs to find 3 tenths to go P10, 4 tenths to move up to 9th. So it's Mercedes are struggling. Let's say that it's going to be a difficult first chunk of the championship, I believe, before they really can make big strides forwards.
Carlos Sainz improves in the other Ferrari and goes up into 4th position. 2 minutes to go. Verstappen quickest, Perez 2nd, Leclerc 3rd, Sainz 4th, Bottas 5th, Gasly, Magnussen, Alonso, Ocon, Tsunoda the top 10, with Hamilton in 11th place. Boris, which I presume is not his real name, looks like a bit of a thingy, a parody account. Anyway, when I think of the BBC's rich commentator history and then I listen to these clowns commentating on Formula One, I just despair.
Thank you, Boris.
Thank you, Boris.
That's very kind.
Andrew Benson is definitely in agreement. That's Andrew Benson's Twitter pseudonym, isn't it? Andrew, a question here from Ian. Has any championship-winning team ever returned the following year with a car as uncompetitive as the Mercedes have brought into this season? Any thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh yes. Think about Ferrari in 1980. They finished first and second in the championship with Jody Scheckter and Gilles Villeneuve in 1979, and their 1980 car was an absolute shed. And also McLaren in 2008 and 2009. Lewis Hamilton won the championship in 2008, and the 2009 McLaren was basically at the start of the season was one of the worst cars they've ever made, certainly in the Ron Dennis era. So yes, there is definitely prior history to this. Mercedes are not alone. And let's put it into context, and we don't know where they're going to qualify this weekend, but they were clearly the third fastest car in Bahrain last weekend. And if we look at the gaps, they were 7/10 off the pace, but the next quickest car was another 6/10 slower than them. So they're unlikely to have lost 6/10, I think, in the space of 5 days.
Now here comes Charles Leclerc, 3/10 up on Verstappen in Sector 1. He's come through turn 13 and it looked neat and tidy. He's about to come to the next notable corner in 16, down a couple of gears, back on the power. This is all looking pretty nice from Leclerc. Remember, the checker flag is out now as the clock ticks down to 0. Leclerc can finish this lap. Verstappen was 3/10 up on his previous best when he did that run before, so Leclerc is slightly slower than Verstappen's lap when Verstappen made the mistake, but crucially Leclerc hasn't made a mistake, and he's coming up to the final corner. He's pushing. This is going to be I'm excited for this qualifying session already. It'll be getting underway in 2 hours' time here on the BBC Sport website. You can definitely hear it here. We might be on Sports Extra at some point, depending on what happens with the cricket, but wherever you're listening to us now, you can definitely hear it. Leclerc goes quickest, 300ths up on Max Verstappen.
Interesting, Jack. Interesting. Looks like the Ferrari has a massive advantage in Sector 1, but then Max Verstappen and Red Bull bring it back in Sector 2 and Sector 3.
Fascinating stuff. The best combination lap time of the sectors is a 29.2, which is half a second quicker than what we've managed here. So there's normally the combined fastest sectors you find a tenth or two, but half a second is quite a big jump. So session concludes. Leclerc quickest, Verstappen second, Perez third, Sainz fourth, Bottas in fifth. Ocon, Gasly, Magnussen, Alonso, Tsunoda the top 10. Hamilton, Schumacher, Zhou, Russell, Stroll the top 15. Not looking good for McLaren. Yesterday looked a little bit better, but not so much now. Ricciardo 16th, Albon 17th, Hulkenberg 18th, 19th, Norris 20th for Nicholas Latifi.
And that is your practice running done. The next time we will see the cars, it will be in the first part of qualifying, as Jack said, in just a couple of hours' time. And once again, Charles Leclerc on top. He has topped all 3 of the practice sessions. And just, Sam, give us an idea of how much that will help a driver as they go towards qualifying, knowing that they've managed to find the sweet spot in every single practice session.
It fills you with a lot of confidence. You can relax in yourself knowing that you and the car have the pace. You know, you're not worried and stressed about trying to find time and forcing it. He's clearly exceptionally comfortable in that car right now, and it's flowing really, really nicely. I would have an eye on the fact that they're losing quite a bit of time in Sector 3. So if they're going to be looking at anything now until qualifying, I think they need to nail Sector 3 a little bit more to make sure that they stay ahead of Max Verstappen.
So why are they losing the time there? Are they using up the tyres before they get there? What's your kind of thought on why they're losing time there when, let's say, Verstappen is only losing time there because he ran wide and almost stapled the car?
I'm not entirely sure, Jenny. I wish I knew. I wish I could give you a better answer. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, here's a question for both of you. Who's the better driver, Leclerc or Verstappen?
Wow, why would you get into that with 2 minutes left on the clock?
Because obviously this is a teaser. It's just to wet your whistle for qualifying.
I think
make sure people come back.
They're very different drivers. I think their style is different. I think Leclerc is I think he's a very pretty driver in the way that he manoeuvres the car around the racetrack. I think Max is more spectacular and aggressive. I think Leclerc is more about the finesse and, strokes the car into a corner. Max throws a car into a corner.
I would agree. I think I'm interested to see what happens with Leclerc in a sort of high-pressure title fight, because that's what I was interested to see with Verstappen, and was remarkably impressed that he stayed the same. Like, he didn't change at all. I spent the whole of last year anticipating at some point him to kind of crack under pressure, and it never really happened. So that's going to be the question with Leclerc, especially when we have seen the odd mistake here and there in qualifying sessions or in practice sessions or in races at times. So I'm excited to see Leclerc in a proper championship fight.
Well, qualifying here last year was spectacular. I think one of Verstappen's finest laps ever, until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't, yeah.
Until it wasn't. He crashed out right at the end, just tapped the wall, and that was enough for him to be done. So let's see who gets the upper hand when it comes to qualifying later on today. As I said, you've got 2 hours. Go listen to the podcast, relax, get yourself a cup of very strong coffee with just a touch of milk. That's what Sam likes. And come back in a couple of hours. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. See you later.